The ancient Athabascans called this mountain Denali, the Great One. For more than a century, it has been the dominant symbol of Alaska. Officially named Mount McKinley, it is the highest of North American mountains. Its peaks pierce the heavens, and paradise spills down its slopes. The mountain watches over a 6-million-acre wildlife refuge. Here are vast numbers of creatures, home to more than 100 species of birds and 40 species of mammals, including grizzly bears, moose, caribou. Your spirit will fly with eagles as you explore Denali's wilderness. See all this for yourself. Take off on an adventure. Discover Denali, where America is still wild and free. Challenge yourself. Let your mind soar. Realize your dreams. Experience Denali National Park, heart of the last frontier. Denali National Park welcomes you. Located in the interior of Alaska, Denali National Park is a subarctic preserve in the heart of the Great Land. Denali's sole vehicle entrance is off the park's highway, a beautiful 5-hour drive from Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, or just 2.5 hours from Fairbanks. The historic Alaska Railroad offers a smooth ride and spectacular scenery to Denali-bound visitors. There's a station just inside the park entrance. Right outside the park, you will enjoy real Alaska hospitality. You'll find comfortable rooms, shopping, and sumptuous salmon bakes. Over 500,000 visitors enjoy Denali National Park every year. Often, the locals are there to greet you. From the park entrance, it's a short hop to the visitor center. This is where your Denali adventure begins. Here is the hub of park activity, a first must-stop on your trip through the park. Park rangers will help you plan your stay, providing the latest information on weather, camping, backcountry permits. You will find rangers giving short talks on history, leading hikes, and even hunting for berries with park visitors. Reservations for the park's popular shuttle bus tours can be made at the Visitor Center. Private vehicles are restricted in the park to protect wildlife and habitat. You must have a permit to drive through the park. Because relatively few permits are issued, it's a good idea to reserve a seat on a shuttle bus. Shuttle buses were an early innovation. These buses arrived as temperatures fell to 40 below zero. From their first appearance beginning in 1925, buses remain the most common way to explore the wilderness of Denali. Climb aboard and settle into a comfortable seat. Bring a hearty lunch. And because summer temperatures vary from the high 70s to low 30s, bring a warm jacket, hat, rain gear, and wear sturdy, comfortable shoes. Make sure you have binoculars and plenty of film. Don't be late. You're embarking on an incredible journey of discovery. You'll travel the historic Park Road, some 90 miles into Denali. Built in the 1920s and 30s, the road often follows a caribou migration trail. As a result, your chances of seeing caribou from the road are excellent. Construction of the road by the Alaska Road Commission was a nearly impossible task. There was hardly enough money. The weather was unreliable, and working conditions were primitive. Problems were eventually overcome by determination and muscle. In 1938, the road was completed all the way to Wonder Lake. The first stretch of road cuts through a stunted spruce forest called taiga. In this often harsh subarctic climate, white and black spruce grow slowly. The small trees you see here are quite old. On windy slopes above 2,800 feet, even these tough trees can't survive. At first glance, it might look desolate, but the taiga is a living landscape. Watch for snowshoe hare and willow ptarmigan, Alaska's state bird. Remarkably adaptive, ptarmigan change color with the seasons, from snowy white in winter to earthy brown in summer. Its year-round camouflage helps protect it from predators. Leaving the taiga, you'll come to the tundra, colored with an artist's pale palette of lichens and moss. Most animals live in either the taiga or tundra. The moose inhabit both. The park's largest animal, moose, can weigh up to 1,600 pounds. These gangly giants spend most of their day foraging. Their antlers may span 80 inches. Long legs help them in deep snow. But it's when they are knee-deep in a lake that moose appear most content. An adult moose may eat up to 60 pounds of foliage a day. Moose need to gain weight rapidly in the summer. Winter months are lean here, and a moose may lose up to 300 pounds before the sun returns to warm the earth. An estimated 2,000 moose live in Denali National Park. At mile 12.8, you'll reach the Savage River Campground, 2,780 feet in elevation. Savage Tourist Camp opened in 1923. This was the winter of 1927. During its first summer season, the camp saw 34 tourists. A 10 by 12 tent house rented for $3 a day. Visitors came on horseback, later by stagecoach and touring car. Today, it's motorhomes and park buses. Savage Rock is a mile marker of the millennium, an outcropping of stone on a hillside scraped smooth by advancing and retreating glaciers eons ago. As you hike, listen for hoary marmots whistling. They may be hiding in cracks and crannies of the rock. The open road is ending. Only shuttle buses and private vehicles with special permits may be driven past Savage River Checkpoint. A limited number of permits are issued to campers, photographers, and researchers. Travel is restricted to protect the fragile wilderness. If you're on a bus, you'll be waved right through. If you're driving, park rangers will update you on weather, road conditions, check your permit, and answer any questions you may have.
Thanks a lot.
Not far past the checkpoint is Primrose Ridge. In summer, it glows with color. Growing in rock crevices, on sunny slopes, anywhere there is warmth, delicate flowers and sweet berries shake off winter's bitter chill. Remarkably adaptive, these plants at 3,500 feet survive extremes that in lower latitudes are more often found at 11,000 feet. Alaska fireweed sets the hills ablaze. It's said that when the last pink blossom is scattered by the wind, Alaska's short summer is over. Denali was set aside as a national park more than 40 years before Alaska became America's 49th state. But it was the Athabascan Indians who first recognized the area's rare quality. It was probably 1500 BC when Athabascans came to hunt and live here. They believed the mountain was the home of the sun. 1905. 2,000 gold miners rushed the Kantishna Hills. 1907, wealthy hunter-naturalist Charles Sheldon began exploring the wilderness, collecting specimens for the American Museum of Natural History. Assisted by Alaskan pioneer Harry Karstens. Witnessing what Sheldon described as the wholesale slaughter of Alaska wildlife, Sheldon lobbied Congress to make the area a national park. His vision was realized in February 1917. In 1980, the park boundaries were expanded to 6 million acres for the protection of animals, and the name was changed to Denali National Park and Preserve. As early as 1916, Maurice Moreno homesteaded the area and built a roadhouse. It became a popular drinking hangout for miners in the winter. As seen here in 1925, an old railroad car became a park station. A park superintendent's office was built. The first superintendent was Harry Karstens, Charles Sheldon's assistant. His office was located in the town of Nenana, but later moved to Riley Creek just inside the park. By 1923, trains were running to the park. President Harding drove the Golden Spike at Nenana on July 15, 1923. The Alaska Railroad had been completed between Seward and Fairbanks. The railroad and the park were growing. Dog sled patrols were established by Superintendent Karstens, an experienced musher. Poaching was rampant in the park, but as word spread of the dog sled patrols, poachers got wise and moved out. Dog sled demonstrations began in 1939. Construction of a park hotel began in 1938. Money was tight. The hotel would be comfortable but plain. So plain that after a visit there, Interior Secretary Harold Ickes described it as looking like a factory. In 1942, American soldiers were sent to protect the territory of Alaska from Japanese attack. The hotel was temporarily turned over to the military. During winter months, soldiers were sent into the sub-zero twilight to test cold weather gear. They also got some much-needed rest and relaxation, taking time to enjoy winter activities like these. The Park Hotel you see today is changed. It was partially rebuilt following a fire in 1972. But the land remains virtually the same, with even more activities. Dog sledding, perhaps the park's most unusual activity to visitors from outside Alaska, has been a feature since the park opened. Rangers explain how the dogs are cared for and how the sleds are made. The team can't wait to run.
That sled probably weighs about 100 pounds. I weigh, about 100 pounds or so. And
Dog sleds are still used to patrol the park in winter when heavy snow makes the road impassable.
they can go maybe 13 or 14 years, but typically it's about 9 years old when they're...
In the past, dog sleds have been used to haul mail, food, supplies, and people. Some Alaska Native villages still use dog teams when they hunt or travel in winter. Since the early 30s, flight seeing has been a favorite activity. In 1935, flights left from this white building at Savage River Camp. Today, flights leave from just inside the park and year-round from the town of Talkeetna, approximately 60 air miles south of the mountain. Nature's rugged architecture looms large in the sky. "23 glaciers spill from Mount McKinley's heights." In 1932, Joe Crossan became the first pilot to land on Mount McKinley. In a daring mission to rescue a party of climbers, Crossan landed his plane at the 5,700-foot level on Muldrow Glacier. Today, it is standard practice for climbers to be flown from Talkeetna to the Kahiltna Glacier at 7,100 feet to begin their ascent. Bradford Washburn was one of the first to explore and document Mount McKinley and Denali National Park by air. An accomplished adventurer and photographer, Washburn's aerial pictures are matchless. Renowned photographer Ansel Adams described Washburn's works as the very first of their kind and still the finest ever made of the great natural landmark. Also an accomplished climber, Washburn scaled many of the Alaska Range's most daunting peaks. And in 1947, his wife Barbara became the first woman to reach the summit of Mount McKinley. Sanctuary River, mile 22.5. Each spring, high above the river's headwaters, the caribou come to bear their young and graze on tender willow leaves and grass. In late spring, the caribou begin their migration to their summer grounds in the far west of the park. Unlike other deer, both male and female caribou grow antlers. Magnificent velvet-covered spikes. They shed their velvet and eventually shed their antlers and grow another grand rack. The caribou's long migration was an impetus for expanding the park boundaries in 1980 from 1.9 million acres to 6 million acres. It has always been a difficult journey. Bears and wolves stalk the slow-moving herd, but are no worse, perhaps, than the swarms of mosquitoes and flies. A sick or injured caribou can lose a quart of blood a week to the insistent insects. Gathering on windswept patches of snow, the caribou briefly escape the bugs. Their migratory route parallels the road between Sanctuary River and Wonder Lake. In the 1940s, 30,000 caribou moved across this northern valley. During the 1980s, fewer than 2,000 were counted. Today, the caribou appear to be thriving in the shadow of one of the world's most imposing mountains. The long, winding road continues. Enjoy a sublime panorama of rolling Piedmont, hushed foothills, and ragged peaks. Mile 29.1, elevation 2,580 feet, Teclanica Campground. Campers with reservations may drive here. There is a minimum 3-day stay. Reservations at this and at other campgrounds are always at a premium. Here at Igloo Creek, the first ranger outpost was established. Rangers were stationed at Igloo Creek to protect the park's Dall sheep. The sheep are named for naturalist William Dall, who led early scientific expeditions to Alaska. Alaska's Dall sheep are small, weighing 200 pounds or less. A good pair of binoculars has always been essential for observing Dall sheep, living high on the mountain's steep slope. There, it is easy to avoid predators such as the gray wolf, but danger remains. Avalanches and rock slides kill many Dall sheep. Still, it is rare for the sheep to descend from their lofty home, feeding, playing, giving birth to lambs on the cliffs. Park rangers and common sense require you to keep your distance when viewing wildlife. Stay at least 150 feet away from sheep, moose, and wolves, Use a telephoto or zoom lens when photographing animals. And of course, be sure to pack plenty of film and extra batteries. This is no place to run out. Past Cathedral Mountain at mile 38, you'll begin a breathtaking ascent to Sable Pass at 3,900 feet above sea level. For the next 5 miles, no one is allowed off the road. This is grizzly bear domain. Notice the long spikes on this sign, an attempt by park rangers to keep bears from knocking it to the ground. They often use signposts as giant back scratchers. It will be easy to spot grizzlies, even from the bus. You'll be able to safely photograph the shaggy beasts from your window. Grizzlies are fearsome, powerful animals. Full grown, a grizzly can weigh 650 pounds and top 6 to 7 feet on their hind legs. In autumn, as grizzlies prepare for hibernation, a single bear may eat up to 200,000 berries a day. Alaska has 98% of the United States grizzly population. About 200 to 300 live in Denali National Park. Digging for Arctic ground squirrel. Always a favorite snack of Denali's grizzlies. Wolves are also found in the park. Like the grizzly, wolves also enjoy ground squirrel. In the late 1930s, Park Service biologist Adolph Murray began objectively studying predator-prey relationships. He concluded that wolves do not prey on humans. Here, his daughter plays with their captive wolf, Wags. As you move on, think of yourself as a time traveler. These winding valleys and rolling hills were sculpted by ancient rivers and glaciers. The last ice age ended in Alaska more than 10,000 years ago. As the earth and atmosphere warmed, massive glaciers retreated, forever changing the world. Mile 45, elevation 3,600 feet. Here in Polychrome Pass, the rocks are more than 100 million years old, evidence of nature's awesome power. Imposing ridges hold the horizon hostage. Jagged rock spurs snag the vague blue sky. It took hundreds, even thousands of years for life to take hold here. The soft green wash of color suggests future forests. At the top of the pass, there's a modern rest stop. All the buses pull in here. This is a good place to get out and stretch your legs. Look for wildlife. Snap some pictures. If you like, you can linger in the area and catch a later bus. Perhaps you will see an eagle drifting on the warm thermal current. The bus schedule is relaxed. Drivers are happy to stop so you can view wildlife, or perhaps dip your hand in an icy stream. There is so much to experience. Here you might see plump, waddling marmots, red fox, prickly porcupines, another fox, or long-tailed Jaegers. Few places on Earth offer such tremendous opportunities for viewing so many different creatures in their natural habitat. And so many spectacular views, so much to photograph. But make sure you save some film. As you round each corner, the mountain looms closer. Mile 66. Elevation 3,730 feet. This is the Eielson Visitor Center today, and how it appeared in 1939. The center is named for pioneer bush pilot Carl Ben Eielson, who in 1924 became the first to land a plane in Denali. Eielson skidded to a stop on a gravel bar to deliver a prospector to his mine. At the center, you will find displays, interesting information, and majestic views. Here, at 20,320 feet, Mount McKinley stands superior to all else. There are several marked trails leading from the Eielson Visitor Center. No matter your athletic ability, here is a place you can walk with nature. An odd twist of history resulted in the mountain being named McKinley, after the presidential candidate William McKinley. What started out as a joke between a Seattle merchant and some local miners somehow stuck. Many photographed the mountain. Some climate. In 1910, 4 miners, known as the Sourdough Group, became the first to reach the summit of Mount McKinley. Novice climbers, they scaled an incredible 9,000 feet on the final day of the expedition, fortified by only hot chocolate and donuts. Unable to resist the silent challenge, thousands of others have attempted the summit. More than 17 routes have been pioneered to the top. McKinley creates its own weather, often hostile to humankind. The weather, the ice, the glacial crevasses demand climbers plan their trips carefully. Most climbers fly in from Talkeetna to the Kahiltna Glacier at the 7,000-foot level. A far easier beginning than those of expeditions which had to hike or mush in. Despite the head start, an ascent of Mount McKinley remains a difficult and dangerous undertaking. Climbers must haul in 60 to 90 pounds of equipment. Less than half of those who try reach the summit. Luck, skill, and sheer will are required. Setting up camp can be arduous. Violent winds have been known to blow tents away. Even boiling water can seem impossible at this high altitude. Still, the climbers come. Hudson Stuck, a member of the Sourdough Group, said, "I remember no day in my life so full of toil, distress, and exhaustion, and yet so full of happiness and keen gratification." For those who stand on the summit and look out on the world, the experience is said to be like looking out the windows of heaven. "90 minutes from the Eielson Center, near Wonder Lake, you'll find a reflection pond. Denali's only amphibian, the wood frog. Wonder Lake, elevation 2,090 feet. Only 27 miles from the mountain. The setting is both beautiful and austere. Here you can set up camp, explore, and enjoy park ranger presentations.
Starts to get really angry. He looks, wait a minute, sticks his head. So one day he paddles his canoe all the way across.
The ranger station at Wonder Lake back in 1939. And today, a late evening view from the north shore of magnificent Wonder Lake, 4 miles long and 280 feet deep, formed by a glacial depression thousands of years ago. Our final stop, Kantishna, an instant boomtown created at the beginning of the century by one of Alaska's gold rushes. Two of the earliest and perhaps best-known residents of Kantishna were Joe and Fanny Quigley. Tough, resilient Fanny lived here for years, hunting, hauling wood, and eventually doing two people's work after Joe was crippled in a mining accident. The remnants of early Kantishna are preserved. You can stay in historic Kantishna overnight. At the charming Kantishna Roadhouse. Relax. Gaze into the heavens. Experience paradise as it spills from Mount McKinley's peak. This is Denali National Park, heart of the last frontier.
Strangely, we must wait for the night and the darkness, though the story we begin is about light. A mystery unfolding, experiences shared, sometimes in fear, sometimes in wonder and delight. This is an ancient mystery, recorded in holy books and sacred tablets. Shared across the midnight flames of council fires. Noted in the logs of long-forgotten galleons. Whispered in the darkness, lest too bold a telling raise some spirit set on mischief or deadly intent. Like an unknown river, whose broken surface tells the seasoned mariner of something hidden below. This mystery ebbs and flows by some unseen authority, some force instinctively respected, a power we mortals will never command. Like a shroud of fog or heavy mist, rolling its concealment across a mountain forest, this mystery veils the endless sky, covering the stars, stealing their brilliance, like candles suddenly dim behind a jeweled gossamer drape. Like a darting flame, piercing without warning the night-black sky, this mystery dances a dervish dance, whirling at a frenzied pace, revealing its secrets faster than the eye can follow.
It was night. A flash of light caught my eye, and I looked toward the heavens. As I stared into the normally familiar starry sky, an event of indescribable beauty suddenly exploded above me. It was like fire, yet did not affect the cold around us. The colors were dashing and sweeping. It was unlike any experience I have ever had.
The chronicles of travelers and mystics, scientists and common folk are unanimous on their experience. Time and again, whether they can explain the phenomenon or not, they are stunned, even awestruck, by the mysterious lights in the sky. Many have struggled to explain what they've seen through whatever frame of reference they may have had at hand.
In the 30th year, in the 5th day of the 4th month, as I was among the captives by the river of Shabar, the heavens opened and I saw visions of God.
Might not this line from the Old Testament reference an auroral display that inspired the prophet Ezekiel almost 2,600 years ago?
A whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud and a fire with a brightness about it. Living creatures appeared, and between these appeared the likeness of burning torches. They went up and down among the creatures. The fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. And over the heads of the creatures, like a bow in the day of rain, so was the light, gleaming like crystal, stretched forth over their heads.
At northern latitudes of the globe, the aurora borealis, the northern lights, are visible as much as a third of the year. In Alaska, when clear dark skies return after the 24-hour daylight of summer's midnight sun, auroral displays of stunning color and brilliance sometimes travel across the entire visible sky. It is such an unusual phenomenon, so unlike any other event we might commonly see, it's no wonder these intense, seemingly mystical lights in the sky would stimulate equally intense emotional reactions in their earthbound viewers. But where do these lights come from? And why do they occur? The science behind the aurora is still being defined, although much has been learned during the past few decades. Imagine an explosion on the face of the sun. As our home star boils and burns, atomic particles, called protons and electrons, stream out from its surface in all directions. Billions of particles per second rush into interplanetary space at fantastic speeds. This endless flow of invisible matter, sometimes streaming out slowly and sometimes like a stormy gale, is part of an energy flow known as the solar wind. One characteristic of our planet is its magnetic field. Although invisible to our eyes, bands of energy extend outward from the north and south poles, creating a magnetic boundary around the Earth, called the magnetosphere. It is the interaction between our planet's magnetosphere and the particles carried by the solar wind that allows the aurora to occur. Imagine our planet as a great rock in a river. The solar wind is like the water, flowing past the magnetosphere, pushing protons and electrons around the boundary of the Earth's magnetic field. But unlike water against solid rock, particles in the solar wind can slip through the boundary of the magnetosphere and tumble toward the Earth. Now, caught by the strong magnetic fields that lead to the poles, the protons and electrons from the sun speed up and crash into the atmosphere along precise magnetic lines. A second process now creates the light we see from below. Imagine a tiny particle of matter carrying an electrical charge and being drawn through the air toward the Earth. The gases that make up our atmosphere are floating in pieces, and when they collide with these falling particles, they pick up an electrical charge that makes them glow. Different gas molecules glow in different colors, just like neon signs and lights most of us are familiar with. To create the aurora, these tiny collisions must happen more than 100 million times per second in every square centimeter of the sky that's affected. These scenes of the aurora were shot from the space shuttle using a highly sensitive black and white low-light camera. Incredibly, since the solar wind continuously carries billions of particles from the sun to the edge of the Earth, the aurora is being made somewhere on our planet all the time. How wonderful the sky becomes. And yet, my grandmother always said, we must not look. But grandfather and another mighty hunter told me the rivers of light in the sky will not harm us if we are respectful of the spirits they contain. We must not whistle at the sky. To be respectful, we travel quietly when the lights appear. Grandfather said there are many lands above the sky where we may travel when we die. Sometimes great shamans travel there now. These are happy places, filled with animals and a great lake. When the lake overflows, the water falls through the stars, which are holes in the sky, and it falls to the earth as rain or snow. It is a beautiful land where the spirits of our ancestors play many games. They play at night, racing, back and forth across the sky, kicking a walrus skull like a football. They play for the Moon Man, who is a mighty hunter and always shares the animals he kills with others. Once, long ago, Grandfather met a man from a village very far away. He told Grandfather the light is from the tail of a fox. It is thrown into the sky when the fox strikes his tail on the frozen snow and ice. Grandfather said that might be, but I don't believe he thought so. If the aurora is occurring continuously in the atmosphere overhead, why don't we see it in the sky all the time? The simple answer is also the most obvious, in that the sun overpowers the aurora during daylight hours. But sometimes the sun's activity dramatically changes. The solar wind becomes a raging storm. Massive flares and explosions, some pushing out 500,000 miles into space, release huge waves of particles, forcing much more of them than normal into the magnetic streams of the Earth. On these dramatic occasions, auroral activity and intensity jump. A few times in recorded history, the aurora intensified so much that its display extended outward from the poles toward the equator, covering the night sky in a blood-red color over as much as 2/3 of the planet. Demons in the clouds over Europe. Dragons roaming the skies of China. Grand battles between ghosts or desperate struggling spirits of the night in Siberia. Ominous celestial visions of events about to occur in Lapland. Why does the sky look this way? Is the world about to end? Without the benefit of scientific explanations we now understand, some witnesses to these events were certain the aurora signified ill fortune or disasters that were about to occur. In ancient Rome, the aurora was described as a sky-bound army. One display was said to have foretold the death of Julius Caesar, another, the fate of the empire in a distant war.
There is no warning of woe more calamitous to the human race. A flame in the sky which seems to descend to the earth on showers of blood. This happened in the 3rd year of the 107th Olympiad, when Philip was endeavoring to subjugate Greece.
But the lights were not always met by ancient peoples with such fearful or uneasy reactions. In northern latitudes, where the aurora is so common, a different vision, one of beauty and power, endures instead. Freya, the most beautiful of all Norse goddesses, is joined with the aurora in their mythology. But along with her status as the goddess of beauty and love, Freya also leads King Odin's chosen Valkyries down to the battlefields on Earth, endued with the power to select those who would die. As these warlike virgins, mounted on horses with helmets and spears, rode forth from the heavens, their armor flashed in a strange flickering light that cast a flame across the northern skies. study of the aurora over the past few centuries has sometimes led to its being labeled as a contributing force behind many kinds of natural phenomena. As in most new scientific investigations, observers were not always correct. Several scientific explorers in the 1800s felt the aurora was linked to certain weather patterns. But when one said an aurora signaled foul weather ahead, another was certain the northern lights foretold fair and mild conditions were sure to come. Other speculations and theories arose. Relationships between the aurora and the phases of the moon. The planets Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter. Even correlation with shooting stars and meteor sightings were forwarded by early investigators. Today, we know most of these associations have no basis in scientific fact. Over the past few decades, more progress has been made in understanding the aurora than throughout all previous history. At last, the mysteries are unraveling and the contradictions are being settled. Relationships between intense solar activity, the aurora, and the Earth's magnetic energies have been of special importance, since when the aurora is most active, its associated magnetic fields can wreak havoc on large man-made objects that conduct electricity. Satellite and radio communication transmissions, power lines, long telephone lines, and pipelines are all affected. In Alaska, engineers responsible for maintaining the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline often deal with effects caused by the aurora. It impacts their work by electrically accelerating the process of corrosion in the metal pipe from which the line is made. Another significant concern over magnetic storms that accompany intense auroral activity are with public light and power systems. For example, in 1980, a large hydroelectric transformer in Canada failed during a massive auroral display. 4 months later, its replacement was destroyed during another aurora. And in 1989, a huge magnetic storm caused this same public utility system to collapse, creating an outage that affected more than 6 million Canadians. In the ancient traditions of the Eskimo songmakers and storytellers, the Inuit poets of the North, creative inspiration comes from the world around us and from a world within. At special moments, this inspiration takes form through songs. These poets explain there are many occasions in one's life when a joy or a sorrow is felt in such a way that the desire comes to sing. They say songs are thoughts, sung out with the breath, when people are moved by great forces, and ordinary speech no longer suffices. I call forth a song born in the stillness, when all thoughts are of beautiful things. It is a new song, summoned with fresh words, for worn-out songs can never be used to respect so great a power. As in that dark winter night, when a sudden light appeared in silence across the sky, these words were found in the darkness and stillness of the festival house. They took shape in my mind They rose like bubbles from the depths of the sea, like threads of fire collecting in the sky, bubbles seeking the air in order to burst. Threads weaving so fast that a great blanket was instantly made. This is how sacred songs are born, to become the property of the person who knows how to sing to others. Nothing must disturb them. Nothing must divert them. They burst forward when they are ready. I call forth a song. It was driven by this flowing force. Thoughts washed over me like a flood, making my breath come in gasps and my heart throb. When I sing this song, I see the fire. I feel the joy and fear and wonder. There are many secrets yet to be revealed about the forces that create these majestic lights in the northern sky. Like many things, we see these events in the heavens very differently, depending on our worldly point of view. When the physicist and astronomer, the scholar and mathematician look skyward, they see energy and matter, motion and time weaving together, helping make visible an infinitely variable process normally hidden from the human eye. When the poet and storyteller, the mystic and the artist gaze above, they see revelation and meaning, mystery and imagination weaving together, helping make visible infinitely variable expressions, normally hidden in the human mind. But anyone lucky enough to witness the aurora will above all find beauty. And hopefully be thankful that this tiny fragment of the invisible has been revealed. And that the infinite variety of nature's creative hand has touched us once again, stopping us for the moment to enjoy this marvelous and mysterious universe from our simple place within it. This is the aurora, the magnificent rivers of light in the sky.
The interior of Alaska is one of the wildest regions left on Earth. It is a wilderness of mountain peaks and flowing glaciers, vast tundra and spruce forest. It is a land ruled by the forces of wind and ice. In the heart of the Alaska Range lies a national park, whose boundaries have been shaped by the creatures that embody this wilderness. Wolves, grizzly, and caribou wander freely, their lives an expression of their own ancient laws. Sunlight revives the slumbering pulse of life after 8 months of winter. In the lengthening hours of light and warmth, summer returns to the subarctic. The young of the year were born when the first green plants began to emerge. Growth is intense, with less than 4 months to develop and prepare for yet another winter. This is the common law that guides all forms of life here. For the young of the Denali caribou herd, growth takes on a special urgency. Carried unborn from the herd's wintering grounds just a few weeks ago, they must already join the return migration. The calves must keep up with the others across high mountains and swift rivers and outrun the predators they will encounter. The moose calf spends the first few months of its life within the sheltered environment of the spruce forest. The moose cow will ferociously defend her young against any threat. Wolves and grizzlies, however, still manage to take their toll. Between the time of birth and early winter, the calf will gain nearly 400 pounds. The habitat for most plant eaters of the subarctic has been narrowed to the range of the specific plants they thrive on. Predators tend to be wide-ranging in their search for food. In a land where prey is rarely abundant, the red fox may need to hunt in many habitats in order to feed its young. By autumn, the pups will be ready to venture out from the den and face the coming winter on their own. After a month of almost continuous daylight, the summer's green has spread from the river lowlands to the high alpine tundra. Most of the plant life in this land above tree line grows in the shallow carpet. It is but a thin veneer of life over cold, barren soil and rock. The Dall sheep inhabit this sparse, windswept realm because the available cliffs offer a refuge from predators. The ewes and their young remain separate from the rams during the summer in nursery groups. Through the abandon of play, the lambs quickly develop their skills of escape and begin to compete with each other. The grizzly spends much of its summer in the alpine tundra feeding on grasses, herbs, and an occasional ground squirrel. The moose and caribou calves that the grizzly pursued in early summer can easily outrun it now. The business of life continues into the ebbing summer night, while food and warmth are still plentiful. Time, like the restless caribou herd, moves on. Despite its vast size and seeming lushness, this land cannot support the teeming animal populations that areas like East Africa are so well known for. Concentrations of animals like the caribou must move over large expanses of tundra to find adequate food. The compelling drive behind the caribou's yearly migration, however, involves more than the search for food. Changing from season to season, year to year, the herd's movements are influenced by a myriad of forces. No longer able to keep up with the herd's rigorous journey, the weak and injured will inevitably fall behind. The relationship between a caribou and its predators is one that has worked for thousands of years. Man's presence in this wilderness park is a light touch of what could be a heavy hand. As long as this touch remains light, these natural relationships will continue. Since early spring, the doll sheep rams have been in bachelor groups, wandering over the high ridge tops of their summer range. It is here that the young rams develop their skills of combat, and in the presence of older rams, learn their place in a dominance hierarchy based on the size of their elegant horns and the strength they possess in using them. The display of these horns is a common language among all rams, a way to immediately convey one's rank. Because of this, most fights occur only when rams of equal horn size question each other's potential. For the sheep, getting along is a means of saving energy. The pika spends its summer in the boulder fields of the sheep's habitat, collecting grasses and flowers into hay piles within the rocks. This is a full-time project and will provide the pika with a steady food supply beneath the winter snow. The marmot has just begun to collect grasses, but these will be used to line its den for hibernation. Though the landscape is still green, the marmot knows that winter is not far away. After months of almost continuous feeding, the Alaskan bull moose is in his prime. By now, the bull has stored a thick layer of fat and has grown a set of antlers nearly 6 feet wide. During growth, these antlers are nourished by a mantle of velvet, a soft covering of skin and blood vessels. In time, this velvet is shed to reveal a formidable sculpture of bone. The rules and rewards for the hierarchies of sheep and moose are basically the same. The bigger the rack, the more dominant the rank, the more likely one is to breed. But the antlers of moose are more than symbols of rank. They are deadly weapons. Before the breeding season, or rut, the bulls develop a hierarchy with others in the area through light sparring matches. These matches rarely get violent, for if either bull was to make the first strike, his opponent could still cause him severe damage, and both would be losers in the game of breeding and survival. For the moose, fighting has evolved to be the final and most serious means for settling questions of dominance. The days grow shorter, and the nights are crisp and dark. Summer draws to a close. Autumn is the bright flame of a summer's energy, glowing for a moment of celebration before the approaching wind of winter. It is a time of movement and migration, and it is a time of purposeful play. A young golden eagle will now test its skills of flight on anything that seems challenging. The grizzly and the Arctic ground squirrel perform the final movements in their dance of predator and prey. Soon, they will both be in the long sleep of winter. The season of warmth and growth has been brief, but as always, life is prepared for what lies ahead. It is early October. The Denali caribou herd pauses briefly from its incessant movement as the season for breeding unfolds. Food now lies beneath a deep blanket of snow, but the caribou's hooves are designed to easily reach it. The wolf is also well equipped to reach its winter food supply. Armed with keen senses and incredible endurance, it is a finely tuned hunter. In the company of other wolves, it is the supreme predator of the North. The pack is the central core of the wolf's life, and in winter becomes an essential means of capturing large, swift prey like the caribou. Sometimes the prey is simply run down, but this time the strategy of ambush comes into play. The balance between escape and death is a dynamic one, and more times than not, the caribou will escape. Soon the herd will migrate outside of this pack's territory, and the wolves will shift their attention to other prey. Predation is a sculpting tool in evolution's continuing art of adaptation. Both the snowshoe hare and the willow ptarmigan lose their summer color to remain hidden from the winter creatures that hunt them. The rut of the Alaskan moose draws to a close. The seed for next year's young has been planted. And now the task facing the moose is to survive the next 6 months of severe cold and deep snows within the domain of the wolf. During the several weeks of intense rutting, the bulls have eaten very little, depleting much of the energy stored from a summer of foraging. Some have been killed or injured in battles to gain or defend harems. The wolves are familiar with the time and location of the moose rut and are rarely disappointed when they arrive in search of food. The wolves and the moose share a relationship of mutual need, for it is the wolves' presence which ensures that only the fittest bulls will survive to breed and continue their genetic line. In the reality nurtured by our mechanized world, death seems to be a meaningless end. Here in the Denali wilderness, the meaning of death is the continuation of life. The Denali caribou herd makes the final thrust of the journey to their wintering grounds. Perhaps the caribou sense a change of temperature, the depth of a new fallen snow, or the sun's shallow arc above the Alaska range. The reasons are as mysterious as the passage they will make on next year's migration. As the Indians say, no one knows the ways of the wind or the caribou. The conflict for dominance is not a struggle for survival of the individual, but rather a foothold on the future. That this foothold exists is the symbol of true wilderness. That this wilderness is preserved is the hallmark of civilization.
250 miles south of the Arctic Circle, a rugged expanse of Alaskan wilderness remains uniquely apart. Mount McKinley National Park. For 9 months of the year, the sun has little to do with this particular corner of the world. At best, it can spare nothing more than an occasional glance. And so the land, though full of life, appears dormant, hard, brittle, and white. In the month of June, the sun begins to linger, and then to pour its full attention upon the land, like a warm hand prodding the tundra into wakefulness. And in response, the pulse of life quickens and spreads through the park. The surge of movement and color is destined to be brief. The summer days are long, but summer itself is a race against the onrushing winter. The land and most of its animal occupants will have just 3 months to renew themselves and their species and to gather strength before winter again slows the pace of life. In this terrain, the thread of survival is thin indeed. With only bare minimums of the warmth and moisture which make life possible, the processes of survival are too spare to endure complications. Here they have been reduced to their most fundamental level. The plants provide food for some animals. Many of the plant-eating animals will become food for predators, and the predators themselves will ultimately nourish the soil and the plants. That is the simple formula for life in this corner of our world. It varies only with the happenstance of the seasons and with the strength and fortunes of the animals in their ceaseless quest for food. Two things combine to make McKinley Park unique among the rare remaining wild places of the world. The first is the naked simplicity of its terrain and its life patterns. So freely does the eye travel from tundra to mountain peak to sky that one prolonged glance will cover the distance from creation to death. Moving scarcely a step, one can see a fragment of glacier ice, 10,000 years old, transformed to water. Witness the water seeping life into the roots of a willow. Observe a moose devouring the willow, and watch a grizzly bear add the moose flesh to his own. In very few places is the full drama of survival enacted upon so wide and open a stage. The second ingredient of McKinley's unique value is that its elemental drama, in so nearly pure a form, may be witnessed by a human audience. Visitors enter deep into the park's interior over a single meandering road. With no branches or offshoots, it is intended less for travel than for observation. People may leave the road, but only on the same terms as the animals, on foot. And like the animals, their numbers are limited by the park's ability to absorb their presence without altering the routine of survival. On such terms, the park visitor may view the forces of nature much as they may have been seen by other men 1,000 years ago. If he walks in the right direction, he may in fact reach that intriguing ground which has so lured men through the ages. He may actually step where no human foot has stepped before. The towering mountains and endless valleys of this wilderness, along with its giant inhabitants, inspire awe for their size and power. But the basic miracle of the park, the fundamental substance of its life, is to be found in a miniature world that reaches no higher than a few inches from the ground. This is the breadbasket of McKinley Park. The stunted plants and shrubs which feed many birds and animals. And the miracle is this. Frozen in their growth for most of the year, with but a few precious weeks to absorb the life-giving rays of the sun, allotted but sparse amounts of moisture, and unprotected from howling winter winds which tear at their shallow roots, over 400 species of flowering plants are maintaining their livelihood. The entire structure of life in McKinley depends upon their continued success. To make the miracle possible, nature has provided this tiny world with a special climate of its own. The tundra serves as its own blanket of insulation, retaining enough of the sun's warmth to raise temperatures within the vegetation 20 to 30 degrees higher than they are a few inches above. And so the harsh battle for survival hangs not on the giants, but the dwarfs, the plants which hug the earth, absorbing its heat and evading the clutch of wrenching winds. The ultimate purpose is simple existence, but there is beauty here too, including flowers so tiny that a bouquet of their blossoms can decorate your thumbnail. During the winter, ground squirrels hibernate. hibernate in the tundra, but lemmings and other rodents continue to scurry about their business under the crusty roof of snow. Less than 36 species of mammals have adapted to life in this land, and most of those species live their lives within this thin mantle of vegetation. Their livelihood comes easily compared to the endless efforts of the moose or the wolf in search of food, but still, no matter how easy or how small, each separate life must meet its purpose, and so the easy life is often a short one. As on the ground, predators and prey alike pursue the constant search for food. The birds of prey and the berry eaters live their lives to the same end as the grizzly and the squirrel. Together with the mammals and the mountains and the tundra, their presence is woven deeply into the great pattern nature has fashioned. Many birds reside permanently in the McKinley area, but others migrate from points as distant as Asia. giving this self-sufficient wilderness its few ties to the world outside. A golden plover flies from Hawaii to lay its eggs in the tundra. Its eggs may feed a weasel, adding more life to the park. But an eagle from Montana will feed on weasels, allowing other plovers to hatch and return to Hawaii. And thus, even from so demanding a land, the web of life spreads outward in fine but traceable threads. The intricate structure of life in McKinley Park is clearly seen in the relationship between the caribou and its staple food, the lichen, a tiny rootless plant. The lichen is superbly adapted to the demands of the Arctic, able to lie dormant through the longest and most frigid winters. Then, with the first touch of warmth and moisture, it begins to grow again. But its growth is glacially slow. A single plant requires as long as half a century to regenerate itself. And so the caribou, which thrive on lichen, could quickly destroy their food supply by overgrazing. But with that brute instinct, so akin to true wisdom, the caribou never pause long enough to deplete McKinley's store of plant growth. They travel ceaselessly, eating on the move, simply passing through the park as they range over vast areas of the Alaskan interior. During their brief visits, some caribou become food for other residents, such as the grizzlies and the wolves. The final result is survival. Survival for the slow-growing lichen plant, the ever-moving caribou, the resourceful wolf packs, and the massive grizzly. Nature's life-giving compromise between time, space, cunning, and power. Intent upon feeding themselves and reproducing their species are not always visible to human onlookers. Their movements are guided only by an instinct to live. On occasion, their quest for survival may bring them within sight of the road, but they are there only in spite of it, drawn by hunger or suspicion, by pursuit or by flight. To see them at such times is to catch a rare glimpse of a constant pattern of life. are days, many days, even in summer, when the clouds seem to descend and absorb the world. The great mountain ranges fade into vapor, and the dimensions of the valleys dissolve into mist. Yet a great sense of magnitude remains, a magnitude no longer seen by the eye, but felt now in the marrow of the bone. On such days in particular, the visitor may sense an overwhelming characteristic of McKinley Park. It is the feeling that time, which obsesses so much of our lives, has had little to do with this place. And the fact is that only a few inches of plant growth separates this land from the days of creation. Crushing forces within the earth created these awesome mountains. The valleys were formed by the immense grinding weight of the Ice Age. No one can say how many hundreds or thousands of years elapsed before the first seed, perhaps carried by an animal or a bird, managed to take root in a patch of dust. And when the first plant died, its decomposition in this frozen and dry terrain must have required yet another vast succession of seasons. The mind can scarcely grasp a hint of how many random seeds may have struggled and failed. How many fragile plants must have decomposed over the centuries in order to clothe McKinley Park with its first thin colonies of soil and growth. Even now, the sharp heel of a boot may dig into permafrost, a layer of ground that has remained permanently frozen since the days of the glaciers. Yet nature persisted, and today, during the brief summer months, the veneer of plant life can brush the very horizon with its color and sweep, stretching beyond the grasp of the eye, back to the bedrocks of time. And therein lies the great lesson to be gained from Mount McKinley National Park. If man will remain content here to watch and to listen, managing his own presence without trying to manage nature, he may find some assurance for his most bothersome doubt. He may learn that when nature is permitted to have her own way, life is inevitable.